Okay, call back to order the Thursday, January 23rd, 2014 meeting of the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the AmeriCorps mentors who are working in various schools in the district. They are working under the Child Abuse Prevention Center program and building healthy communities. Come forward, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and go ahead and stay up there. January is recognized as National Mentoring Month, and Sacramento City Unified School District values the contributions of its countless administrators, teachers, staff members, and community partners who mentor students on a daily basis. Tonight, the board would like to recognize 10 stellar staff members who are AmeriCorps mentors, working in 9 middle schools and 4 high schools throughout the district, and who individually commit 20 to 25 hours per week to support some of our most at-risk youth. These 10 individuals, under the supervision of the district's Youth Development Department, provide daily support to students and empower them to achieve academically, establish healthy relationships with their peers and caring adults, make wise decisions, and to build a positive self-image. These outcomes are accomplished through direct services that include, but are not limited to, academic tutoring, facilitating social support groups, and exposing students to service learning opportunities within their community. 4 of the 10 mentors work under the Child Abuse Prevention Center AmeriCorps program and provide essential support services to foster youth within the district. The core members are recruited from communities with the highest rates of child abuse and neglect and are providing training and support and the opportunity to perform family support service in school communities. They facilitate friendships, clubs, and provide one-on-one services for foster youth at 9 district middle schools during lunch hours and spend at least 1 hour per week with each student. In addition, these individuals teach independent living skills to high school-age foster youth to aid in their successful transition into adulthood. The remaining 6 members work under the Building Healthy Communities Youth AmeriCorps program, in which they serve students in the Oak Park community on campuses such as Hiram Johnson, American Legion, and Health Professions High School, as well as Will C. Wood Middle School. As part of a coordinated effort to mentor youth in 9 communities throughout California, the AmeriCorps members deliver high-quality mentorships to reinforce positive choices and behaviors. In addition, they recruit local volunteers to engage in activities to improve and strengthen their communities. The Sacramento City Unified School District is proud to recognize David Fong, Imani Thompson, Dana Furuyama, Francisco Flores, Catherine Vargas, Huang Hun, Nathan Jones, Kaylee Brani, Jessica Bentajova, and Tatiana Grant as stellar staff members. And for those of you whose names I butchered, I apologize, and I thank you very much for all that you've done. Thank you. Would you like to say something, somebody?
Wow, you made it sound really good. I don't think any of us prepared something profound or thoughtful, so I just like to say that we really appreciate it, and thank you, and we'll share this with our students.
Member Arroyo.
Just really quickly, can't thank you enough for the work that you do. I think that in great respects, at least personally, I can say that I'm a product in many ways of the mentors that I have come and been in contact with throughout my life. And the work that you're doing and the contact you're doing with those students, I mean, I can guarantee you will, that's something that it's going to affect them for the rest of their life, I think, for the positive. And thank you for what you're doing and continue to do it. And we all, appreciate it very, very, very much, the impacts that you're doing in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Roy. And I believe the superintendent has certificates for you, and we have a photo op. So. Thank you for all you do. This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Today's meeting will air Sunday, January 26th at 8 p.m. and Monday, January 27th at noon on Channel 14 and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker slip located in the back of the community room and give it to our Chief Communications Officer, Mr. Ross, raising his hand. Prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation, please speak to into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Responses to questions by the public will be posted on the district's website prior to the next board meeting. Please limit comments during public comment to items not on the agenda. If you're found to be commenting on an item on the agenda, you'll be asked to defer until your item comes up on the agenda. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate. Announcements of action taken in closed session. Mr. Behrens?
None, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Agenda adoption. I would like to make one change to the agenda, and that is to remove 8.1F, and we will hear that as now item 9.1, and everything else will move down. Other than that, the agenda, I move remain the same. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Board workshop, strategic plan, and other initiatives. 9.1, which is now approved resolution number 2774, project labor agreement process. At this time, I'm sorry, did I miss all the public comment? The public, We will go back to public comment. Do we have public comments, Mr. Cross?
We do have 5 comments on item 7.0 from Darlene Anderson, Jessica Arriaga, Maria Harlan Sullivan, Nikki Malevsky, and Maria Rodriguez.
Good evening, board members. I had an opportunity to participate in the LCAP meeting last night, and I'm Darlene Anderson, by the way. I'll just state my name. And I had questions after I left that meeting. My number one question was, how does the district plan to ensure that the children that are on home study have the same educational options as children who are enrolled in the district? Because the district still utilizes the zero tolerance policy, and there are many children who are still considered enrolled in the district that are not attending classes every day. And I wanted to know about the zero tolerance policy. As long as this district continues to use behavior as a prerequisite to participate in public education, behavior is going to be the focus. The social and emotional learning does not address an adult identifying the child as having a behavior issue. What you do is you make that child a target. Instead of teaching citizenship, we have adults making children targets. And I think that we need to go back to what happened a long time ago in school and teach our children how to be citizens and how to respect one another. We have some really, really good teachers in our district. And if we can teach our teachers how to teach the children to respect each other, I think we'll get far more ahead than to continuing to go down this road of zero tolerance and behavior issues and creating criminals, because I think that's what we do. I can't imagine a child being identified as a bully in high school and being put out and then coming back to take revenge when they can't have a life. And that's what I see further down the road. I think that we need to be more proactive in helping children become productive citizens rather than targeting them as having behavioral issues, which they will never survive from. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Good evening, Superintendent, President Kennedy, I was going to say Cunha, and board members. My name is Maria Sullivan, and I was just recently elected president of the DAC. I first of all wanted to thank Christina Pritchett for all of her help and her support in the current election process. And I would like to introduce the current, the election process. We elected full new executive board. I'm president. Dave Ross is first vice president, and he will be overseeing the Budget Advisory Committee. Edward Camargo is our second vice president. He will be overseeing the LEAP and the LCAP. Christine Oliver will be our secretary, who will be overseeing membership. And we're very excited and very happy that we're able to move this process forward, and we've got an exciting agenda planned. We developed a highly organized forum to promote dialogue between the parents and you, the board members. And I wanted to assure you that I will safeguard the DAC's core values, and which I'm sure that all of you also share. And I wholeheartedly believe in the importance of an independent parent voice. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Kennedy and board members. My name is Jessica Arriaga, and I have students attending Earl Warren and Kit Carson. I, too, went to the LCAP Advisory Committee meeting as well. And I have to say I'm pleased that we're having conversation, but I'm not pleased with how the conversation is going. I know that we have 8 priorities, and as a district, we can determine which priorities we want to focus on, and at the school site level, which one our school site needs to focus on as well. But we don't have any data to really make those kinds of recommendations as to what our school site needs, and we're not having the conversation as to what we want to focus on. We're sitting at tables saying, okay, in a perfect world, I'd like to see more of this, I'd like to see more of this, I'd like to see more of this, but it's almost equivalent of, well, if the Ken Forest presented to you, we need to cut $200,000, where do you want to cut it without giving you any figures? That is what it feels like to me. I want to make some informed recommendations to the board and to the school district as to what my child needs, and I need the data to support that. It's very loud. There's a lot of people. It feels more of a forum and not of a committee. I don't see any feedback coming back to the parents and those that are participating. When we're asking for information, they're telling us, oh, you can find that information on the website, you can find it here. But you're stating, I'm participating in a committee, you should be reporting to me as a member of the committee and providing me with that information. Some recommendations is it would be helpful if you develop maybe FAQs, frequently asked questions and answers. That will help alleviate some of the repetitive questions that other parents may have. Possibly a focus group to get an idea of better ways to conduct these meetings. When my employer went through changes like this, that's something that definitely helped them to identify how they can better serve the communities and the people that they're working for. So I leave those recommendations to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arriaga. Those were good recommendations, and we'll talk about them. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Noguchi. I'm Nikki Malevsky, President of the Sacramento City Teachers Association. SCTA appreciated the opportunity to discuss the core waiver with Superintendent Noguchi today. While we did not have time to discuss all of our concerns with her, we did discuss the consultant claims made within the application. The waiver required SCTA to be meaningfully engaged and to solicit our input on the waiver. The application claims, and I quote, "The Sacramento City Unified School District has convened several meetings with their teacher representatives during the spring of 2013 to orient them to the waiver application, field questions, and seek input. Interim Superintendent Noguchi was unable to give us any information about who attended these meetings or when or where they were held. We have asked the district to provide that information. In an additional attempt to show how SCTA was meaningfully engaged, the application goes on to say, at a May 1st meeting, the school board president responded to a series of questions raised by the Sacramento City Teachers Association on issues including proposed changes to the principal and teacher evaluation process. Board Member Cuneo, you were board president then, you and I talked today, and you had no recollection of any meeting occurring at that time. We're very concerned and ask these questions of the district because no one has ever meaningfully engaged SCTA. There was no meeting with SCTA in the district. So when we see that several meetings, and they claim that the board member Cuneo held a face-to-face question and answer session with us, we were shocked. We want answers. Did our district fraudulently submit or allow an application they knew to be fraudulent to be submitted to the United States Department of Education? Because of the time constraints, we're not able to share. I'll discuss all of our concerns about the core waiver with the interim superintendent, and we look forward to our next meeting. Along with our concerns about the waiver's impact on the district's general fund and its erosion of democracy, SCTA has concerns about the local politics behind the waiver. It should be no secret that former school board member and current city councilman Jay Chenier, through his firm Capital Impact LLC, are the driving force behind the waiver. Also, knowing that Councilman Chenier stands to profit personally from the waiver, we are concerned that many would see his endorsement of current school board members for their bids for higher office as a conflict of interest. We look forward to discussing this topic more with the board, the interim superintendent,
You wrap it up,
Noguchi,
Ms. Malevsky. Thank you.
our members, and the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Kennedy, Superintendent Noguchi, and members of the school board. My name is Maria Rodriguez, and I'm a parent in the district. I have a 9th grader and a 6th grader, and I love this school district. About a year ago, I started attending these school board meetings upon the information that there be closed schools. I've been opposed to those school closures, and unfortunately, they did happen. One thing that I asked for last year, a few months ago, was to test an assumption, a fear that I had. I had this fear that students who were now having to travel farther distances to their school would see their attendance at school be impacted. Particularly, I'm concerned about Washington, whose distance from their old school to their new school is nearly 2 miles. I did that walk myself, and my concern is if students miss the buses that are there for them, there's really no realistic way for them to make it to school on that day. The staff presented an awesome report on the impact of absenteeism on students' achievement throughout their school learning time. It's ironic to me that even having that information, you wouldn't take into consideration how these school closures may impact these children and their absenteeism. So I'm asking again, and in fact, I wish Mr. Hanson was here because he has supported this request publicly on this dais and to my face. He has supported the request to ask, how has attendance been impacted by the school closures? It seems like easy data to collect. Maybe my fear and concern was wrong. I have a few more seconds left, so I'm going to give you a story. I feel pretty useless up here. You guys have, some of you have smirks on your face, and I really can't tell what you're thinking.
We're thinking that you're doing a great job considering the clock wasn't working. You just keep going.
So hopefully you'll rewatch the recording and listen to what I was saying, since it seems like you're focused on the clock. One of the things that I do feel like I have an impact on is helping in the classroom. This past year, I helped in my son's classroom, and I get to help with children who are struggling. I was working with a girl who was struggling really bad. She's in the 5th grade, and she could hardly do any of her math. I was really connecting with her. I had this amazing connecting moment. She is not at that school anymore because she was being bused to our school. Her absenteeism was out, I mean, there were more days that she wasn't there than she was there. And I'm sure there's other issues besides the fact that she had to catch a bus to get to school. All I'm asking is, if we're going to close schools again in the future, let's understand the impact that it has directly on the kids who are impacted by these closures. Thank you for your time.
Okay, now the consent agenda, and again, I will remind the board that we have removed item 8.1F. Is there a motion for the consent agenda? Moved by Vice President Pritchett. Is there a second? Second by Member Cuneo. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Abstain? The new 9.0 is the former 8.1F, resolution number 2774, project labor agreement process. Ms. Allen, are you here? I am going to, at this time, recuse myself from this item, so I will hand the gavel over to Vice President Pritchett.
Good evening, Board. Superintendent Noguchi. Just a couple of quick changes. One, the resolution, if adopted or passed by the Board, will reflect, I don't know if it'll be Vice President Wu or Vice President Pritchett's signature instead of Board President Kennedy. And then I was able to find, with the help of Joe Steinmetz, our Career Tech Ed Coordinator, some numbers. We had some questions about how many students participated in the program in the past. So in 07, we started with 24 students, ending up with 9. And then the summer of 08, there was about 38. We actually had to add an instructor because of the number of kids, so we had 2 instructors that year. And then in 09, which was the last time we were really focusing on this, we had about 20 kids start, around 20 to 25 kids. So those were, I know, numbers that the board was asking for. But other than that, everything before you is as it was presented a couple weeks ago.
We have public comment.
We have 5 public comments on 8.1F, or the formerly 8.1F, I guess. The comments in order. Folks can please line up behind the microphone in the order you're called. Dennis Canavari, Eric Garcia, Richard Markison, Nicole Gehring, and Bob Blymeier.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members. My name is Dennis Canavari. I'm with the Sacramento Sierra Building and Construction Trades Council. Tonight you have the opportunity to do what many school and community college districts have done. San Diego Unified, De Anza Community College District, Antioch Unified, Solano Community College, to name a few, have adopted and renewed PLAs. The College of Marin recently commissioned a study by the management law firm Dennis, Walliver, and Kelly to determine the cause and effect on its use of a PLA. The law firm found no cost increase when comparing projects the college built with using a PLA and projects built without. They continue to use that today. Another reason to have work performed under a PLA, California Labor Code 1771.3 now states that school projects covered under a PLA will not have to contract with the state to ensure compliance with prevailing wage law. This means that 1/4% of the value of your bond that would have been gone to administrative costs can be used on other PLA projects within the district. That's a minimum savings of $1 million on over $400 million of bond compliance monitoring. But there's even another more exciting reason you heard about is the continuation of the Sacramento City Unified School District Construction Academy that was part of your previous PLA. The experience of our own district and other districts teaches there are other benefits to PLA. One of the many benefits is the ability to access qualified workers at predictable costs to support bringing your school projects in on time and within budget. It is expected that PLA on the Kings Arena and other upcoming construction projects, we could find ourselves short of highly skilled workforce we want working on your projects. The PLA ensures that Sac City Unified School District will not have to worry about competition for skilled workers for their construction projects. In closing, I urge you to adopt the PLA before you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent, board members, my name is Eric Garcia. I live in the district, pay tax in the district, and have children that will soon be attending your schools. I have invested many hours training in the union apprenticeship programs in order to succeed in the construction industry. Adopting this PLA will ensure I have an opportunity to grow with a good paying middle class job with benefits. I have been out of work for some time due to the downturn of the economy. Your actions tonight could offer me and many others in my situation a chance to return to my chosen career in the construction industry. I urge you to support the adoption of this PLA, which will set minimum standards for your future construction projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. I'm Richard Markson. I'm here tonight representing the Western Electrical Contractors Association, the Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors of California, the Air Conditioning Trade Association, again urging you to reject the project labor agreement. There really is no benefit for the school district to do that. You heard tonight that the quote-unquote success of your academy was very marginal, to be generous. In fact, it was had such stellar participation that the district even stopped tracking it after 2009. There is no value for you to use a project labor agreement, and in fact, National University that conducted a study recently found that the district would be paying a premium of 12 to 15% over the cost of work that is done under a fair and open competition scenario. We encourage you to embrace all of the contractor and worker community in Sacramento. Projects will be covered under prevailing wage law that sets benefit and pay standards and requires apprenticeship utilization, and state law is sufficient to protect workers and to protect the school district. Do the taxpayers in Sacramento a favor and reject the PLA. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Noguchi and members of the Sac City Board of Trustees. Nicole Gehring with Associated Builders and Contractors. I spoke before you here a few weeks ago. Our association remains opposed to your current drafted project labor agreement, and we would like to see some amendments put in there that would allow for an alternate bid provision where so you can get bids with and without a PLA. As you hear, there are studies on both sides, and this would give you an accurate, real-time, relevant data point on a project bid with and without a PLA, so you can really see how the numbers stack up in regards to how many bids you get and the dollar amounts of those bids. I'd also ask that you would consider some accountability in your project labor agreement. I don't see anywhere in there where you're going to review it after 1 year. I don't see anything in there where if you don't get 3 bids, you're going to bid without a PLA. And I also don't see any provisions where if you get bids over the engineer's estimate that you'll reject those bids. I would suggest you take a look at that language. And also in regards to something that may allow for you to embrace the contractors in the Sacramento community more is if you would allow them to continue to pay their health and welfare benefits to their workers instead of having to pay it into the union plans. And how you would do that is you can use a threshold of the ACA metal plan, in which they're required to do anyways. And if they're meeting those minimum standards, those credentials, then they are qualified in that regard, in regards to the health care. So that way they're not having to be forced to pay it twice. So this current version of the PLA, I would ask you to reject and go back to the drawing board and get some amendments that could be more fair and palatable to the industry. Thank you for your time.
Do we have any more public comment? No.
We have 2 more comments. It's Mr. Blymeyer here and then Darlene Anderson.
My name is Bob Blymer. I'm representing the Sacramento Taxpayers Association. Good evening, Madam President and Board Chair. We're very much against the use of project labor agreements for these reasons. They unintentionally discriminate against non-union workers. Studies have shown, and one was described just a few minutes ago, 13 to 15% more costly than when PLAs are not used. It also reduces the size of the pool to draw workers from, particularly local workers. let the marketplace decide how this thing goes rather than let the union decide. The district needs to maximize the use of all of their funds. Nobody has to tell you how much you're suffering today funding all of the things that you want to do. It's very difficult, obviously. We, again, urge you not to support project labor agreements, but we want to add to that we are not against using union help at all. Obviously, a lot of union contractors are going to get many of the jobs that open up. We just want it to be fair and reasonable and open it up to everybody, including non-union. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Darlene Anderson, and I'm a taxpayer too. And what I heard tonight was we should just disregard project labor agreements because, quite frankly, the district failed to have children who were going through that program anyway. So what was that all about? We should just give the big business our children and have them come in and bid and have all we've been working on last night since 2009 was building schools or building buildings. We're not working on educating the children. That's not a priority of this district. It's been who gets to have the contracts. And I'm frustrated, quite frankly, because this district has lost ground in education trying to cater to the business community in Sacramento. There are people, everyday union people, who would have an opportunity to get training. Yet this district has not focused on educating children to go through the process of becoming contract workers or whatever, however the program was written. It was written to benefit the children in this district. That's what it was written for, not for construction companies to come in and say, we can't afford to lose those $1 million contracts because you're going to stop us from paying our children, our health care. Well, what about our kids? Don't they have a right to have an education? Don't they have a right to have their parents working in Sacramento County and having access to public health care? I'm appalled. I'm appalled that they would think that they have the right to come in here and hold you accountable. Maybe because you are board members and you need some money to run for office, they can expect your vote. Maybe that's what we're looking at. But quite frankly, I think that those people that came out here tonight to support the project labor agreement that was written, the way it was written, and if there needs to be some tweaking, perhaps maybe so. Maybe they need to look at if they get not enough bids. But quite frankly, that one statement made me get up here and say, how dare you say that the district did not do the work it needed to do to ensure enough children were in those programs in the first place.
Thank you. No. Okay, no further public comment. Do we have any board comments? Okay. Sorry, learning how to work the machine. Member Cunha.
I'm not working on my mic. So there were some questions about the cost-benefit analysis that the district has done over the PLA. Can you just, for the record, let us know what the status of that is?
We have not done a cost-benefit analysis specifically to quantify whether project labor agreements have saved us money or cost us money. Really, the only way we could do that is to require general contractors who bid on our projects to submit a PLA bid and a non-PLA bid. And even then, I don't know that we would get truly accurate results. There might be a tendency to lowball one. I would love to work with the Building Trades Council if this goes forward to come up with a way to get a good measurable method to see how much we are saving, if we are, or if it does cost more money, and what that percentage point might be. But we have not done any measurable data.
Okay. I would urge staff to try to work with the trades and see if we can come up with some indicators around that. Thanks.
Member Arroyo.
Thank you. And I think that as far as I can tell, and I think that it would be very valuable to have that quantification. And I think that it's helpful because it's broader than just dollars and cents. In many instances, it's about not having to redo the job, right? And I think that in many instances, PLAs do help us find the type of work that and type of worker that it's trained that we know we can depend on to make sure that shoddy work doesn't happen. And I think that sometimes it's not as easy to say, it's just dollars and cents in the first ledger, but in many instances to ensure that we have the type of work that we want, right off from the gate. Many times we don't quantify how many times we would have to do work if the work is not done correctly the first time around. So with that simply said, I think that it would be good to quantify it, and I think it would be good to also look at it in a broader perspective. That is not just how much is the bid, but also contracts that if we needed to redo again, or look at the broader context of what it is, not just the short term and the beginning, but also the long term investments that we have. Thank you.
Any further board comment? All right, can I get a motion? Oh, we don't have a quorum.
No, we do.
One,
Yes,
two,
you
three.
do.
Oh, four. Yeah, we
You
have four.
Four, so it would take
I'm here
four
too.
affirmative votes. And if there are four affirmative votes, I want the record clear that each is voting for it or against it or abstains. Okay?
Okay. Motion? Roll call?
I move that we approve the PLA.
Motion by member Arroyo, second by member Rodriguez. Roll call. Oh, just call it? All in favor, aye?
I would just suggest a roll call to make sure.
Yeah, that's
because
what I thought.
It takes 4 votes to pass this resolution.
Member Cunyo?
Aye.
Member Rodriguez?
Aye.
Looking here. Member Arroyo? Aye. And Second Vice President Pritchett?
Aye.
You. You did good. Especially since I didn't have a clue.
Thank you very much, Vice President Pritchett. Well done. 9.2, approve amended board bylaws policy, board bylaw 9250, remuneration, reimbursement, and other benefits. This is, you see in your packet, we have the new board bylaw, which has to do with the procedures that we will now follow going forward to ensure remuneration of all board members. Are there any questions of the board? Is there a motion? Is there public comment? Is there a motion? I'm sorry. It just doesn't show you. No, it's working fine. It's not working. Go ahead. Member Rodriguez.
Vice President Pritchett had an issue also, so I was just wondering if.
No, just yours is on.
Oh, okay. So if you could just help me out here, because I did, due to illness, I wasn't here at a couple of board meetings just recently. Did this come before the board for a first reading by any chance? I cannot.
It did not.
recall.
Would you like to make this a conference item? And then, I mean, we actually did see it in closed session, but it did not come before the public. If you would like to make this a conference item and continue it as an action item next week, then you can make the motion saying so.
I would recommend that when we work on policy that we follow a protocol of having a first reading and then an action. However, for this time, I'm comfortable with this policy going forward, but I think that it's just appropriate to have it first reading and then action on a go-forward basis.
It's an appropriate and good recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that might affect your next item regarding absence due to hardship, because it's based on the amended policy defining hardship.
Mr. Behrens, let's not get on the other side of a bridge that doesn't exist at this point. Okay. Any other comments? We have a motion. Second? Who's that? Okay. Moved by Member Arroyo, second by Vice President Pritchett. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay. 9.3, approved resolution regarding board stipends. This actually is, as you know, the new process going forward. Part of it is going to include that whenever there is an absence that is to be excused, we will publicly acknowledge that and vote on it. And that this is going back, I believe, 3 years. And so if there's any questions, any public comment? Any questions of the board? And Member Rodriguez so noted. Any other questions? Is there a motion? Vice President Pritchett, is there a second? Second. Vice President Kennedy. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? 9.4, superintendent search process. I just wanted to give a real quick, brief update on the superintendent search process. What has happened and transpired so far is that an RFQ was developed by the board. It was very much in line with the RFQ that was used 5 years ago that went through a very thorough public vetting with some minor changes this time around. It has been on the street for approximately 10 days. It we'll get it back the first week of February, at which time the board will then look at, go through the recipient, the responses, and we will at that point award a contract to one of the respondents. At that point, we will work with the contractor that is selected as the search firm to come up with a calendar starting. So our commitment is at the end of this school year. We'll start from there, and we will work backwards in order to put together a calendar that affords the public input that we think is required and necessary and important for determining our next superintendent. So that's just an informational item at this point. Are there any public comments?
We do have one comment on this item from Nikki Malevsky.
Good evening again, board members. Nikki Malevsky, Sacramento City Teachers Association. And I wanted to stand in support of the intent contained in this agenda item. Community engagement and transparency, yes. We need to be sure that those things happen within this process. Picking a new instructional fiscal leader for our district is one of the most important things that this board will do in the coming months. We want to be sure that our labor partners are included in the process. Under the former superintendent, the relationship between the labor partners has hit an all-time low. Trust and collaboration has become non-existent. As president of your largest labor partner, we expect to be included in the process of the superintendent search. Our hope is that this process can be a starting point to rebuild a relationship between labor and management within this district. We would look forward to being meaningfully engaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malevsky. And so I'll reiterate that it is our intention to reach out to our stakeholders. Of course, our labor partners are a significant stakeholder, so we look forward to working with you on it. Thank you. Any questions, the board? Member Rodriguez, you still want to turn.
Thank you, President Kennedy. I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank staff for the work that they did on this. I really like that the new look of your proposal and how you included everything in it. So thank you very much.
Okay. Anything else? 9.5, Common Core Implementation, Dr. Olivine Roberts. Dr. Roberts. This is an incredibly important issue. Understood. Don't feel compelled to the 90 minutes, though. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Board President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, and board members. I am joined tonight by Dr. Iris Taylor, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and various members of our stakeholder groups, principals Ted Appel and Evelyn Bafico, teachers Peggy Clapper and Cherry McCaskill, instructional aides Imelda Ramirez and Rebecca Zimmerman, parents Angel Garcia and Sarah Inman, and lastly but not least, training specialist Rachel Claren. We're pleased to share with you our Common Core work. As such, this will not be a usual presentation. Tonight, we hope to engage you in the process where this is going to be interactive. So we'd like for you to try on the Common Core work. So as we go through the presentation tonight, we will be asking you to maybe take on the role of a student. We may go into a classroom and observe a class and ask you to tell us what are you seeing in terms of what the Common Core standards are calling for. So we look forward to that engagement. Also, as we go through the presentation tonight, instead of waiting until the end to hear your questions, we will pause throughout the presentation and give you an opportunity to ask questions about that section of the presentation that we have just addressed. So, our agenda tonight. Okay. Basically, we will begin by first providing you the vision for the implementation of the standards. We will then provide an overview of the standards, and then we will move into how we are addressing our special populations and give you a glimpse into the readiness, where we are in terms of full implementation for the operational year 2014-15. So, to begin, the vision. As outlined in Pillar 1 of the strategic plan, as well as Principle 1 of the NCLB waiver, we're committed to ensure that our students, when they leave us, they are indeed college and career ready. This is also the impetus for the Common Core state standards, which are aligned to college and work expectations. They are more rigorous and they are internationally benchmarked. They have defined what it means to be a literate person and the essentials for college and career readiness in the 21st century globally competitive society. The standards serve as a vehicle for us actualizing Pillar 1 and Principle 1. They really outline the goals that we are trying to achieve. What I'd like to do now is to pause and have you to view this video that really captures the essence of the Common Core state standards. This is by the Council of Great City Schools.
Like it or not, life is full of measuring sticks. How smart we are, how fast we are, how well we can, compete. But up until now, it's been pretty hard to tell how well kids are competing in school and how well they're going to do when they get out of school. We like to think that our education system does that. But when it comes to learning what they really need to be successful after graduation, is a girl in your neighborhood being taught as much as her friend over in the next one? Is a graduating senior in, say, St. Louis as prepared to get a job as the graduate in Shanghai? Well, it turns out the answer to both of these questions is no. Because for years, states have been setting different standards for what students should know and be able to do at each grade level. That's making it too hard to know if our kids are really doing well enough overall, and if they can really compete for a job someday. What we really need are clear goals. That's where the Common Core state standards come in. They're like a total sea change in education. Consistent, strong, clear benchmarks for English language arts and math. Here's how it works. You can think of kindergarten through 12th grade like a giant staircase. Each step is a skill your child needs to learn before stepping up to the next one. But right now, too many kids aren't really confident with like 2 + 2 before they have to move on to 2 × 2. We need more focus on the skills that help them move up the stairs, or they can slip up and fall behind. And there's another problem. What if everyone's stairs were made at different heights? Well, here we go again. They are. So, a boy in Seattle who's rocking an A in English literature could be getting a C on his Chicago friend's staircase. Oops. We need to create consistent steps in education, too. So first, each standard creates a landing on the staircase, a stop along the way as your child heads toward high school graduation. Each stop is a chance for every parent and teacher to focus on the skills their students are supposed to know at that step, no matter the zip code, language, or race. And more importantly, each standard makes sure all students are learning what they need to know to get to graduation and beyond. Because something like counting to 100 leads to understanding dollars and cents, which eventually leads to understanding how to manage a budget. Secondly, the standards are consistent from school to school, and they match up against international standards too. Now we know how we're doing compared to just about everyone. So even though local communities will still design their own curriculum, with the same rules, everybody can compete on the same kind of staircase. But standards aren't learning. That's why we need teachers, parents, and students to help make that happen by working together to help kids meet these standards. The world's getting more and more competitive every day. But now, when our kids get to the top of their staircase, they can have way more options on where their life goes from there. Clear goals, confident, well-prepared students. That's the Common Core State Standard.
Video is also on our district website. So for us here in Sac City, for us to contextualize the work, this is a framework that we have developed. It captures, if you were to look at the center of the rectangle, inside the rectangle, it captures the key elements of the Common Core State Standards, the habits of mind, the standards for mathematical practice, as well as the college career-ready descriptors. You will hear more about them in a few minutes, the content standards themselves, and then the instructional shifts that we must take as educators to ensure that our students are able to grapple successfully with the content standards and be able to have experiences that will provide them the opportunity to exhibit the practices and the college career-ready descriptors. However, as we focus on the implementation of those three buckets of work, it is necessary that we also provide equal attention to the outer sides of the rectangle, that the curriculum that we are using is in alignment to the Common Core State Standards. Later on, you will hear that what we currently are using is not, but what the remedy is for that. Also, we need to ensure that the assessments during instruction, after instruction, they are in alignment to the Common Core. The learning experiences, how we're transforming the classroom space and how we're providing an opportunity for students not to be spectators, but to actually be active participants of their learning. So how we're recultivating the teaching and learning space. And lastly, but definitely not least, is the equity lens, that we're ensuring if we truly desire for all of our students to be college career ready, then we need to provide that access point, that entry for them to be able to engage with these rigorous standards and be able to have the support to be successful. So this is the framework that really drives our work as we move forward with the implementation. So, an overview of the Common Core State Standards. When we talk about the Common Core State Standards, we're talking about the English Language Arts standards as well as the mathematics. And for ELA, it has three major components: the College Career Ready descriptors, the Anchor standards, as well as the English Literacy Content standards. And the English Literacy Content standards are not just for the ELA classroom. For the first time, as far as I know, in the history of education in this country, we have a set of standards that will drive how literacy is integrated throughout science, social studies, the technical subjects. So it's literacy across all content areas for the first time, not just the responsibility being placed on our ELA teachers. In mathematics, we have the standards for mathematical practice as well as the math content standards. At this time, Dr. Iris Taylor will come and will speak to you about the English Language Arts standards.
Good evening, Board President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Noguchi, and members of the board. So to start us off, we're going to take a look at the ELA College and Career Ready descriptors. And as Dr. Roberts said, these are the habits of mind or the capacities the capacities of a literate individual. And so what I'd like you to do as you're taking a look at these descriptors, just take a pen or a pencil and circle the ones that you find yourself doing in your daily life and work. Or if you want to think back to when you were in college, which ones of these were most relevant to you while you were in college? Okay? So I'm going to describe a couple of these, but you'll see as I'm talking that there's such an interconnection between these capacities that we're trying to develop in our student and that the College Core calls for. So the first one is that students need to be able to demonstrate independence, which is really saying that they need to be able to utilize the skills of the language arts. They need to be able to write, speak, listen, read, without a lot of scaffolds and supports. So if they're reading text at their grade level, they need to be able to do that without a lot of support. The next one is around being able to build strong content knowledge. And so this is requiring that students not just read, that they read deeply around particular topics or content areas so that they have strong content knowledge and that they're able to speak about different topics, write about different topics because they have such a strong content knowledge. That directly links to the descriptor around being able to comprehend as well as critique. Okay? You can't really critique something that you don't understand very well, or you can, but it's not a very strong critique. So our students need to have deep content knowledge so that they can not only understand the text that they're reading, but they can also offer some critique. They can challenge the assumptions of the person that are writing, they can challenge the ideas, and they're not just absorbing what the text is saying. And when we're talking about text, we're not just talking about print-based text. In this society, visual text is also coming at them. Audio text is coming at them. So they need to be able to really understand that text deeply and not just understand it, but to be able to challenge it. The next one is around valuing evidence, also connected to building strong content knowledge. So as our students are speaking or as our students are writing about the things that they're reading, we want them to be able to make assertions and make claims by using evidence from text. We want them to be able to reason logically and to be able to support their assertions with what they're seeing is evident in text. So hopefully you're able to see that, and I'm going to ask you, so which ones of these are you noticing that you're doing in your daily world of work? Or any standing out for you?
Yeah, I'm not particularly helpful, pretty much all of them, yeah.
Okay, I heard all of them. And when we pose that question to our teachers and to our parents and to our instructional aides, anyone who are engaging in professional learning, that is the response. These are things that we do on a daily basis. These are things that kindergarten students can do, first graders, all the way up the line. These are the habits of mind of a college and career-ready student. These are the habits of mind of a literate individual in our
I'm not
society.
sure, Member Rodriguez, do you demonstrate independence? Oh, okay, all right.
I see. Moving on. So now, what we'd like to do is have you take a closer look at one set of standards. And so we're going to take a look at the reading standards for informational text. One thing that you should know about these standards, and we think it's a beautiful thing, is that the Common Core standards for ELA have divided reading standards into standards for reading literature and standards for reading informational text. The reason for that is that there's a recognition that that's a different type of reading. The texts are constructed differently, and what you need to do with that text is different. The purpose for reading it is different. Okay? So they divided them up, and we're going to take a look at the ones for informational text. We're going to zero in on just one of those standards. So you have your long sheet of paper, the legal size. You could pull that out. Everyone have their paper? Okay, so what we'd like you to do, you have in front of you grades K through 5. What we'd like you to do is just read across from kindergarten to 5, only standard number 2. And as you're reading, please underline, highlight what's changing in that standard across those grade levels, and then have some conversation with the person sitting next to you, so you might need to scoot over. Have a conversation with the person sitting next to you about what you notice is changing and what's the significance of that change. So I'll give you a few minutes to read.
Yeah, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm going to pull you back together and just ask, so what did you notice? What's changing across the grade levels in that particular standard? And then what do you think is the significance of that change? Okay, so were there some specific things that were said in the text that made you think that?
Well, what I had said is the difference is complexity, right, as you go from one grade to the next. It's understanding the main idea and then being able to explain it back, and it just gets more complex between the simple idea to then how and more paragraphs, and it just gets more complicated. But the essence is understanding it and then being able to explain it back, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. Did anyone else want to add to that? What you noticed about what was changing?
Yeah, it went from just simply identifying to then taking it to the next step of, all right, we already know what it is, now how? And then, all right, we know what it is, we know how, and then why by providing the supporting documentation. And then it actually gets more complex by numerically going up even at the end.
Absolutely. So just even noticing that text, as students engage in more and more complex text, oftentimes there's not just one main idea, but there's more. There may be several main ideas. So how do you tease out what those main ideas are? And then how do you show how that main idea is being developed in the text through identifying the details? So thank you. We looked at number 2. I could have asked you to look at number 5 and do the same task, and you would see that same progression. Okay? I also could have asked you to look at grades 6 through 12 or K through 12, and you would see that same build across all the grade levels. This is a wonderful change in the ELA standards, is that the progression of the skills is very apparent in the ELA standards, which is very different from what our California standards were. Okay? All right, you ready to go a little deeper?
Clearly, by the way, board, this is more of an informal workshop and kind of fun, by the way. So don't push buttons and stuff. Just jump right in and have a good time with it.
Okay, so now we're going to take that same standard and we'll ask you to try on the work of what that standard is asking students to do. So on this slide, we have a quote, and it's from our strategic plan. It's a quote from President Barack Obama. So what we'd like you to do is read this quote, and then there are 2 questions on the next slide that we would like you to try to answer about the quote. So the 2 questions are, what ideas do you notice emerging in this short text? And what in the text supports you in thinking that? So take a few minutes and then, again, have some discussion with the person next to you. Okay, I'm going to pull you back together. So what ideas do you notice emerging in this quote? And what in the text supports your thinking?
Still need to turn your mic on, though.
Oops. You said to just jump in and talk, not turn on my mic. The words every American is mentioned twice. Also the fact that it says, but whatever the training may be, every American will need to get more than a high school diploma.
So what do you think is the significance of that emphasis on the word every?
I think it's just encouraging every single American to go and get this.
Okay, so we're actually in a different standard. These
You're
are,
gonna
what we're getting at are the language standards, which is nice because what the language standards ask our students to do is really pay attention to the language that's being used. And it's the idea that when people write, if they're writing for audience, task, purpose, they're using language strategically, right? And so that's why I asked, so what do you think is the significance? Because he did it twice, every and every. So there's an emphasis being placed on that word, and there's probably a reason behind that, okay? But if we look at the idea, and so I'm going to move on. I'm being pushed to move on. Thank you for your engagement. All right.
This
so
is really
wrap,
smart, you know that.
So on this slide, we're just highlighting some of the shifts in the Common Core and what you should see as different in classrooms as you're out in schools. What should be different while you're out visiting campuses? One of them is this huge emphasis on informational text that I spoke of earlier, because informational text is what we normally see, we see most of in our daily work lives and also in college. And so the Common Core is calling for a change in how much informational text is being used in our classrooms, particularly at the elementary level where they're calling for a 50-50 split. But then at the high school and middle school level where it's 45-55, it's the understanding that is spread over the course of the school day. So it's not just the English teachers who are doing that, but knowing that they're getting informational text and reading informational text in science, social science. So the literacy across the content areas that Dr. Roberts spoke of. The next thing that will be different is our students being able to support what they say with textual evidence. Just like we pushed you, what in the text is making you think that? That's the type of dialogue that you will be hearing in classrooms with students responding with evidence from text. Another thing is around text complexity. Okay, so rigor is really built into the standards in terms of text complexity. There's an understanding that as students progress over the grade levels and even within a grade level, they should be reading text at varying, increasing ranges of complexity. Okay. The last few things are around the emphasis on research. So our students will be building deep content knowledge through this work around researching. And then writing is integrated with reading. So we're talking about no more decontextualized writing prompts like what did you do last summer, but where they're writing based on text that they've read. And then finally, a huge emphasis on academic talk and discussion. And we like to emphasize the academic in front of the talk and discussion because it's not just talk for talk's sake, but it's really teaching them the academic discourse of engaging with text. Which is different from talking to your friends on the playground. Okay. Finally, we share with you this example of what's old, what student expectations are, and what work might look like under our old paradigm, and what it now looks like under the Common Core. So if you could take a look at these two examples, and I'm not going to ask you to tell me what's different, I'll just share with you. The second, the new, is really calling for students to justify their thinking, again, provide evidence for their thinking, and really support it with evidence from text. Whereas on the left-hand side, the old, you have a 25% chance of getting that right, okay? And we would never know what your thinking was from just an A, B, C, or D answer. So that's a little bit about the ELA Common Core. Dr. Roberts will come up. Oh, questions?
Can we just jump in?
Yeah.
All right. Let's just jump in. So I didn't want to answer any of the questions because I have a third and a fifth grader, so I'm kind of doing this right now. One of the things that I noticed increasingly is, and as a parent, I push my kids to be a little bit more independent in doing their work. But the language, like you were talking about, the academic language. So as my children are reading, My oldest will often stop and say, okay, so I predict that this is going to happen next. It would be really nice, especially for board members who don't have that happening at home and don't get to see it in the classroom when we go for our visits. It would really be nice to illustrate that, through a video interaction. I know Dr. Olivine Roberts, you brought that forward one time, a video of the balanced literacy and how it happens and looks like in the classroom. I'd like to see that in the future, if you more interactive in that manner. Like, what does it really look like in the classroom?
And we're going to share with you in the math portion. We'll actually share with you a sample of what it looks like in the classroom, but we can definitely bring back some
That is
real
awesome.
examples as well.
But as you were talking way at the very beginning of the slide, and you were talking about the standards, and you asked us to read them. As a parent living through this, the question that came up to me is, and I wrote it down because I don't want to say it wrong. It's like, what do the parents need to know? What behaviors do we need to display to help the Common Core state standards be successfully implemented? I think that's the key. We talk about this up here, but we don't talk about beyond the classroom and the continued learning that takes place at home.
And I think, and one of the things that we do in our workshops is, trying to help parents understand how the work is changing, right? And then also providing what are the supports that you can provide for your child? Given that you now get how the work is changing, what can you do at home? So we encourage things like having discussions about text, right? And here's some language that you can use to have those discussions about text with your child. Even if it's text in your primary language, engaging your students and talk about text. And so it's things like that we're sharing either in the parent workshops or also in our parent brochures where we provide some concrete examples of these are some things that you can do, but we also want to work with our parents to understand, what the difference is as well. Okay, so we're going to move on to math.
If we're moving on to math, then I'm going to hand the gavel again over to...
You do not have permission to leave.
Yeah. I already answered my question.
Math is your friend. So, similar to the ELA, mathematics also has a set of habits of mind. They're called the Standards for Mathematical Practice. And these are the behaviors that we want to see students exhibiting, demonstrating in the mathematics classroom. They call for students to not only problem solve, but also to persevere. I want you to think about when you were in school and you were given word problems to do. Were you enthralled? Were you happy about doing them, or did you say, you know what, I'm not going to do those? So what we're trying to do is to change that attitude in our students for them to see a word problem as a challenge and have the skill set and the determination to plow through. So when we talk about persevering and problem solving, we want them to have the tenacity and not to give up. Not to say, okay, I'll only do those that are just simple, but be able to do that. So that's one of the practices. Another is reasoning and explaining. Similar to ELA, students will need to make their thinking visible in a math classroom. I remember when I was a teacher, I would say to my students, I need to see your work. Now it's not just about showing the work, but the student being able to communicate, to verbalize their thinking, being able to use tools in mathematics wisely, like a calculator. Calculator is not the enemy, but we need to share with our students how to use the calculator in a meaningful way. And lastly, how to have a good command of the mathematical language. So when we talk about precision, we're not just talking about a right answer. We're also talking about students being able to communicate with each other as well as with the teacher in the classroom. So these are the standards for mathematical practice, the behaviors. So just like Iris, Dr. Taylor has given you a text to read, I am going to do something similar. I've given you, it's on green paper, so we're able to distinguish it very quickly. One of the math practices, this is math practice number 3, where we're asking students to construct viable arguments and to be able to critique the reasoning of others. We would like for you to read this text and to annotate. And as you're reading the text, we ask you to put a square or a rectangle around something that just really resonates with your thinking. And then put an exclamation mark around an aha. Wow, they're expecting students to do this. This is awesome. And then where you have questions, just put a question mark. So we'll give you a few minutes to engage with this math standard. When you're finished, I invite you to share with your neighbor just one of the 3, something that squares with your thinking, an aha, or a question that you may have, please. So do you mind sharing with the audience, with us, just one of the 3 that you discuss with your partner?
What was it? And I had an aha. Such arguments can make sense and be correct, even though they are not generalized or made formal until later grades. I thought that was.
That's interesting that we're asking students to do that in a math classroom.
That was neat.
Yes, very different. As you were reading this, were you comparing this to when you were in the classroom? And did you do any of these things in a math classroom? Yes, very good. Okay. Uh-huh.
Sorry. Last sentence is what struck me was students at all grades can listen or read the arguments of others.
Yes.
And when I was speaking with Dr. Noguchi, we were talking about, well, what about EL students or special ed students?
Yes. And what we're seeing them being very responsive to this type of instruction because they're able to use diagrams, they can draw. So it's not just about the words. So wherever they are, they're able to then explain their thinking and give us an insight as to their mathematical understanding. Okay. You notice the verbs throughout, where students have to make conjectures, explore the truth of those conjectures, recognize counterexamples, analyze situations, compare the effectiveness of two plausible arguments. And these math practices are for students who are in kinder all the way through grade 12. So this is not a 12th grade classroom. This is true for kindergarten through 12th grade. And these are the things that we're asking students to do. So let's take a deeper look as to, if you were to walk into a classroom, what would we expect you to see? So what would it look like? What would it sound like? And what would it feel like? So it may look like students talking with each other, they're listening to each other, they're providing supporting evidence, they're justifying their responses. They may be using objects. We call them math manipulatives in the math classroom. They may be using diagrams, drawings, or actions to really help make their thinking visible. So those are some of the ways when you walk into a classroom that you'll be able to observe immediately. Students are engaging with math practice 3 in this manner. Now, as you're listening, it may sound like they're making conjectures. You will hear them verbally. They're defending their mathematical reasoning. They're using the mathematical language. They're deciding if your argument is correct or if someone else's argument is correct. They're seeking clarification. And just frankly, it will be loud. Because kids are talking, they're no longer sitting in straight rows and quietly working independently on columns of problems. So we want the discourse, we want the conversation in the classroom. So it may sound sometimes chaotic, but it's good chaos. And lastly, what it may feel like in the classroom, at first it's going to feel messy and awkward because this is a new space for mathematics. Okay? It's not the norm when you walk into a classroom to see students engaging in this manner. So at first it may be awkward, but what we're seeing is we're seeing students having a sense of validation that, oh, I am right. And they're changing their mindset, their attitudes regarding mathematics. And they're having a sense of accomplishment. And you also see the support where they're able to use each other and the teamwork that is being built in the classroom. So this is just math practice 3. We would be able to outline for you for the other 7 math practices what it would look like, what it would sound like, and feel like in the classroom. So now I invite you to take this data, and we're now going to enter a virtual classroom for about a few minutes. This classroom is already in action. So we're walking in while the teacher has already begun the lesson. And we want you to take a look to see what does it look like, sound like, and feel like.
So I have a situational story for you. I need your help to solve a problem. All right? Can I count on you? All right. Our family leprechaun projects are due. In first grade, we tried to be very creative. The month of March, their family homework project was to come up with a leprechaun trap. Who doesn't want to catch a leprechaun and come up with a pot of gold? But I can't just shove them all into a room. I need them in containers. So I thought the kids could come up with how many containers would I have to go to Target to buy to house the 30 leprechaun traps. Now, each container must have the same number of traps. So how many containers should I buy at Target? I want you to find 2 different ways. This lesson wasn't about division. This lesson was about addition. What are the different number combinations to 30 that would make them in equal groups? So the kids who see 3 groups of 10, the kids who see 6 groups of 5, everybody could see 30, but everybody saw it a different way. How would you have 3 tens?
If you have 10 and 10, it equals 20. If you have 10 and 10, it equals 20. And then 10 more equals 30.
Okay, so if you had, but now think about this, how many containers would that be?
There would be 3 containers.
Okay, so if I had 3 containers, and you're saying...
1 10 and 1, another 10 and another, and then one other one.
Okay, so that's one way. Can we think of another way?
I was thinking of something like by 2s.
Oh, okay, counting by 2s.
By 2,
The number 30 was chosen because there are so many different ways to be able to make the number. We didn't come up with just one solution. I want them to explore. I want them to see that there's more than one way.
Like, I counted by twos because first I was doing it like in groups of 6 or something, but then I said, I don't think we have enough cubes for that.
Okay.
So I don't know how to do 5s, but maybe we could try doing 2s. And so I did 2, 4, 6, 8.
It's definitely all about mathematical reasoning. With Common Core, they just need to be immersed in it. But now they're really using it as a strategy. And I'm hearing what strategies, and it's not just, well, I counted and it's in my head. No, they can mathematically reason how they get to answers. There's another way. Juliana?
It's like on a dice.
It's like on a dice.
We'll stop. What did you see in this video in terms of the attributes of Math Practice 3? What we're asking students to do. Did you see students sharing their thinking? Okay, and I believe that was a first grade classroom. Did you hear the mathematical language being used and the thinking being visible? So that is what we're working towards in every single classroom and every day, and on every given day. Now, so the expectations are changing. So we don't no longer want the straight rows and want students just to give an answer or a guess, a 50% guess on the left. But if you look on the right, you'll see the same concept is being assessed, but it's being assessed in a very different way. Now we're seeing this student being asked to justify the response, to be able to give a rationale for his or her reasoning, or, yeah. I was going to do that. No. Thank you, Dr. Noguchi. I appreciate the support. So, that's just a glimpse of the Math Common Core mathematics standards. What questions do you have regarding mathematics?
If you mind, President Kennedy. Yes, I do. And so these are very powerful conceptual ways of engaging education, right? From the paragraph and the things that stood out to me, and it's just a huge transformation from going from processes and steps to actually visualizing, mental visualizing, which is very powerful for developing strategies and then higher level thinking. Phenomenal. And it's the standard at which we need to be, and then it's the how we're getting there and the steps. And I think that in future presentations, as you have them, so it would be really helpful to also hear from the teachers in the classroom telling us their particular examples of as to how they're working. This is what we're striving to, right? And then eventually we want to make sure that not only there's a buy-in from the teachers, but they're actually engaged in actually helping us develop this kind of strategy in the wholesale of education in our district. And then the last comment is for the board and for Interim Noguchi. I mean, I think that in some ways we are benefiting from Common Core as the methodology that you're using to present information to the board. So it's kind of like implementing Common Core for the board.
You're getting
and
a
board
taste of it.
presentations.
Thank you for that feedback. And tonight, you will hear from a couple of our teachers tonight about the journey that they've been on regarding the implementation of the Common Core. But it is important that we provide more examples, not just via our website, but also as we engage with the board and with our parents via our parent workshops. So we provide some very concrete examples. So we appreciate that feedback. Anyone else?
I have a question about, and I wanted to ask at the last one about ELA, but grading, it's a lot more complex now. If we're moving from this, circle A, B, or C, or put in the greater than, less than, equal sign, those papers were a lot easier to grade. You had the grade book, the guide, and now you have, as a teacher, you're having to read content and then decide whether that falls within this alignment of whatever standard it is. So, teachers are now going to be burdened with a lot more time needed to grade the students' papers. So, what are we doing as a district to provide those supports to our teachers so that way they don't have to take home papers to grade, as like they do take them home these days, but they don't stay until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning grading because of this new way of in teaching and instructing and response.
So one of the things that we have done is, and you approved this, I believe, the last time we came before you regarding Common Core, through the utilization of the Common Core state funds, schools were able to receive, every teacher, 6 hours of Common Core collaborative planning time. If the teachers so choose to utilize the time in that manner to help to come together collaboratively and score, they're welcome to do so. In addition to that, the team of teachers who do come to the district convenings also receive 2 collaborative planning days on site. And so I know that schools have utilized those days as well. As a matter of fact, one of our middle schools today, the math teachers came together and they scored we're calling it the Smarter Balance like performance task that we've asked students to administer to their students this year, so we can get a feel for how the students are exhibiting the math practices and the ELA college career-ready descriptors that Dr. Taylor alluded to. And so they're coming together, and schools are also creating some unique ways. One of the things that we do need, so when we talk about going forward and lessons learned, is that this requires time, and we do need to have dedicated time within the calendar, within the school day, for teachers to be able to do this work. But right now, this is still a year of learning, so there are things that we have tried to put in place to help accommodate that need.
Okay, so we're not saying or even suggesting that we're going to be using CPT all the time for grading.
Not all the time,
it's
but
just it's available right now to use. But we're hoping to move to a different model
as we move forward. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Now, at this time, we will talk about our infrastructure of support, and Dr. Taylor will come and facilitate the first half.
So as we mentioned earlier, this framework really guides our implementation of Common Core and has implications for how we engage our teachers, our leaders, our instructional aides, and our central office staff. And so a key area of our implementation is just capacity building. The Common Core is requiring a huge shift for teachers, which you've experienced a little, as well as for our leaders. Anyone who touches children is undergoing a shift. And so we have engaged various groups in professional learning. From our leaders who meet on a monthly basis, their whole work has been around the Math Common Core this year, and it's been focused on ELA in previous years. This year also, we are engaging our assistant principals and our site instructional coordinators. Same message, trying to build a consistent and a common understanding of what the Common Core is asking our students to do. In addition to that, our principals are meeting in networks on a monthly basis, and many of them have elected to have their networks focus on the Common Core. So there's deep immersion around the Common Core, beginning to be deep immersion. With our teachers, we have cadres of teacher leaders who come to the district convenings 4 times a year, and then they also have that time back at their site to do site-focused work. In addition to that, because of the Common Core state funds, as Dr. Roberts spoke about, every single teacher in the district has 6 hours of Common Core collaboration time that they can use to continue their learning around the Common Core. We also have instructional professional learning for the first time this year with our instructional aides. We've had one session. We'll continue to meet with them 2 more times over the course of the year. Again, similar message, trying to build common understanding. And then finally, we've met with various departments in the organization doing presentations and workshops around the Common Core, different departments outside of the academic office. So at this time, we'd like you to hear from a couple of our stakeholders. So you'll hear from 2 principals, Ted Appel from Luther Burbank High School, and Evelyn Befico from John Cabrillo Elementary School. And in addition to them, you'll hear from 2 of our instructional aides, Imelda Ramirez, who's an aide at Mark Twain, and Caleb Greenwood, and then Rebecca Zimmerman, who's an instructional aide at Leotada Floyd. So if you could come up.
Good evening, Board President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Noguchi, and members of the board. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to come before you this evening to share our journey with the Common Core standards. Before I begin, I just want to provide you with a little background about the Cabrillo staff. Some years ago, when I arrived at John Cabrillo for the first time, we began to realize that we were lacking high levels of teaching and learning in our classrooms. So we sat down, we began to collaborate to try to identify different ways to bring rigor into the classroom and make our students' learning more meaningful. So when the Common Core standards were introduced to us, we understood the need for those standards and we welcome those standards. When I say we welcome the standards, I am not saying that this is easy work, because this is by far the most difficult work that I've encountered in all of my years as an educator. But it is work that was necessary. There have been days that we've been frustrated. We've just felt confused, just downright defeated. But it's at those moments that we've stopped and we've asked ourselves, what is it that we expect our students to do during times like this? And that is, we have to persevere through those difficult times and problem solve to make sense of this work. And it's only at that time that we're able to start to shed light on this work and make it more meaningful for us. So as we continue on with our journey, we acknowledged early on that this is not just the work of the administrator, of our teachers, of the district office folks, but it's also the work of our students and of our parents. And so we've taken on the responsibility of providing them with that information and the resources necessary to make sure that that learning continues at home. We began a series of workshops that have ranged from topics such as the difference between homework and studying, because the days of those single-page worksheets are over, and also have allowed time for our parents and our students to compare the California content standards to the California standards. So we continue with this work. And it's a great feeling right now, because we've got the greatest team just available. We've got our students, we have our parents, we have our teachers, our instructional aides, we've got the district staff. And so we are confident that we are going to go forward and make sure that everyone is learning at high levels, and that includes the parents, the teachers, our staff, administrators, and district personnel, because at this point in time, we are all learners. So I'm excited about this work. I appreciate all of the efforts put forward by people like Iris and our reading coach, Miranda Burton, because they have opened those lines of communication. They're there for us to provide us with the guidance and the support that we need. And I also would like to thank the staff at the district office for the countless hours that they have committed to the research and the writing of the grants and the development of those workshops for our parents and for our teachers, instructional aides, and for administrators. So I'm excited. I think we've got a lot of things that we're going to accomplish over the next few years. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Noguchi, Board President Kennedy, and members of the school board. My name is Ted Appel. I'm the principal at Luther Burbank High School. At the secondary level, the school district has taken some significant first steps to inform administrators and some teachers about the Common Core state standards. Principals and some assistant principals have attended monthly math meetings. Some math and English teachers have attended two district sessions, and two more scheduled for this year. Some science and social science teachers attended the English sessions as well. Along with the district meetings, as was mentioned, some schools have begun to use the 6-hour release or pay allocation for teachers at the sites, and these hours are being used according to school and or department needs to learn more and develop more curriculum about the Common Core. Certainly not all of the Common Core is new, and many aspects of the standards have been the work of teachers in schools for some time. But there are shifts, and there are many challenges with providing all teachers and administrators with the kind of ongoing training and support necessary for sort of successful and dynamic implementation. I think that in the coming years, there'll be a need to create structures at sites which provide time for teachers to collaborate, provide feedback to each other, to study, and to support one another in what needs to be viewed as ongoing work and not sort of one-time training that anybody becomes proficient at because they've done it once or twice. This needs to be ongoing work. I think in this way, staff development for the Common Core curriculum can be viewed as a dynamic process, and that teacher growth and curricular innovation will be the product of structures that are ongoing and not seen as sort of one-time opportunities. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, President Kennedy, and Superintendent. My name is Imelda Ramirez, and I'm an instructional aide, and I've been with the Sac City Unified School District for 17 years. I work as an instructional aide in Mark Twain Elementary, as well as Caleb Greenwood. One site being an all-inclusive program, inclusive practices for special ed, and the other being pull-out. So I also have done interpreting for workshops for the parents for the Common Core. So I've gotten insight from the students, various teachers, various classrooms, principals, as well as the parents. Mostly what I want to see is what I have brought to the table is the special education piece. And I see that we already use this with our special education. We teach them to think, they have various ways of thinking. And so we help them use manipulatives. We help them visualize. We draw pictures. They already do this. And so now that it's like open to the classroom. I work with, when I do pull out, we do it in the classroom. But when I push in, there are students who watch me working with special needs children, and they want to learn just the way they do. They want to draw the pictures. They want to use the whiteboards and do what they're doing. And now they're able to. And so I find that it's almost even easier for our special ed students because they've already been taught this way. They think this way. And so it's somewhat more challenging sometimes for our kids who are more gate because they're used to knowing that's the answer, that's how I got it, and I don't feel like I need to justify it. But so it's a learning process. It's challenging for them. We have a lot of work to do. It's exciting. I see that the parents are some of them are nervous, but most are very excited, especially when they go to our workshops. They have a lot of questions, but when they see what an actual lesson looks like, they're very excited. And they're also shown some games, some kind of communication that they can have with their students when they go home. So as you were asking, when you go home, what kind of things can parents do with their children, that is shown at the workshop. And I'm very pleased to see that because our parents are very excited. They have some games with manipulatives to be able to work on some math problems with their kids and some communication that should be held at home with them. They all agree that their kids aren't going to like this at first because they need to justify, not just this is the answer or it's how did you get it, justify it. Show me how you did that. And that's about it. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, interim superintendent. My name is Rebecca Zimmerman, and I'm an instructional aide at Leotata Floyd Elementary School, an inclusive model site of our district. I've experienced both site and district-wide exposure to Common Core state standards. The district has created and carried out Common Core professional learning sessions, specifically for instructional aides. The first of 3 meetings occurred last month and provided support staff with great information on these new standards. The atmosphere and content were relevant to the topic and gave me a better understanding of what we will be transitioning to in the new school year. I look forward to the upcoming sessions. My school site has also been supported in multiple ways. We've been provided with 2 academic coaches to support this transition process. These knowledgeable ladies have made a positive impact on learning by modeling lessons that we are able for educators to observe. This has had the most impact because we are able to visually see how Common Core will influence the classroom next year. As a priority school site, we have been preparing our students over the past few years in many ways through our school-wide positive behavior and intervention support plan and focus on social emotional learning. Our students are already familiar with this component needed for Common Core success. As a parent and educator, I feel our school district is working to the best of their ability to prepare all educators for the future Common Core state standards. I'm thankful that instructional aides have been respectfully included in this process. Thank you.
Okay, so another key area of our work is to provide instructional materials and just shift the instructional practices of our teachers. We've done several, I would call, innovative things this year, particularly in the English language arts Common Core session, since we're a bit ahead in English language arts than the mathematics. And that includes things like arts, beginning to embed some arts integration as well as technology integration, because our students are going to need to become definitely more facile at using technology. Another strategy has been around the development of units of study. So it's pretty common knowledge that the instructional materials that we have currently are not aligned to Common Core. And so the district has begun implementing and developing with teachers units of study as a strategy to kind of fill that gap. So in addition to that, we are in the process of convening teacher teams to develop curriculum maps, to develop a curriculum that is aligned to the Common Core. And then finally, and we're excited about this, is the fact that this year will be a year that we're able to adopt mathematics instructional materials, and we're also going to be able to supplement our ELA curriculum materials. So beginning in February, we'll convene a team of teachers to begin the review process to determine, what instructional materials might be best for the district to support Common Core implementation. I do need to say, though, there's a lot of there are a lot of materials out there that have been presented, but we are very insistent and very, it's important that we give those materials a very thorough review. And if they're not materials that are aligned, we feel that it just would not be, we would not be good stewards of the funds to purchase something that would not support the implementation. So we'll move to identifying supplemental materials because we recognize that our teachers need instructional materials to make this happen. So what I'd like to do now is have you hear from a couple of our teachers who've been engaged in this work since the beginning. They've been with us along the journey. I would like you to hear from Cherie McCaskill and Peggy Clapper. Peggy's from Albert Einstein, Cherie's from Earl Warren. And then we'll also hear from Rachel Clarine, who's one of our math training specialists.
Good evening, President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Noguchi, and board members. My name is Cherie Harris. I've been introduced twice as McCaskill, but it is Harris. I have been a kindergarten teacher at Warren Elementary for 16 years. I have been involved with Common Core implementation since the beginning. As a classroom teacher, it has caused me to change my way of teaching for the better. I can see the advantages of Common Core as a progression from year to year. I am working closely with my first grade team to ensure that I adequately preparing my kindergarten students to meet the Common Core head on next year when we are entering first grade. I have worked on improving the writing program at kindergarten to embrace the new Common Core standards. I was in cohort B for ELA for 2 years and have integrated much of my training into my current classroom structure. I am pleased to see the integration of the social studies and sciences into the reading portion of our instruction. It has been a challenge, but a welcome one. This year, I am in the K2 cohort for mathematics. I am incorporating many of the ideas into my math instruction. I have provided you with a small packet with a sample lesson plan that addresses the new approach to math, a few writing samples, and samples of a summary of the story Thunder Cake. All samples are from this year's kindergarten's class's work with Common Core. Also, I am involved with helping to create the new report card for the Common Core standards that will be fully implemented next year. I see this as a great stride forward for education in the country, the state, and Sacramento City unified. Thank you.
Good evening, board members and Interim Superintendent Noguchi. My name is Peggy Clapper, and I teach English at Albert Einstein Middle School. I'm going to cut to the chase. Common Core has elevated thinking in my classroom. It has given the opportunity to get back to the core of our disciplines. Back to reading, back to writing, back to thinking. Reasoning has replaced answer getting in my classroom and across the board at Einstein. Students write, students think, students discuss academically. I started this journey with Common Core 4 years ago. I was part of cohort A, B, and then I presented last year at the leadership cadre. And am I still presenting this year? Okay, yeah. It's been a great journey. I also work with the teachers at my school in developing lessons, incorporating reading strategies, close reading strategies, and combining the reading and the writing together. We also develop grade level units of study. Together, we are learning, we're trying, we're making mistakes, absolutely, but we are reflective learners. I'm growing as an educator, and when I grow, my students grow. My principal, Garrett Kirkland, encourages us to take risks in the classroom. This past summer, the Language Arts Department went to New York to Bard College, and we immersed ourselves for a week in writing and thinking. Nothing is closer to the core of the Common Core. Our beliefs on writing were challenged and transformed. After that week, everything, the past 4 years that I've been learning with Common Core, it all just kind of came together and put a little bow on it. I came back sure of the freedom to use close reading strategies in abundance. My students no longer read the stories by listening to the stories on a CD. They get involved with the text. When you read, how do you get involved with the text? It's about creating relationships with the text. And as Dr. Taylor had mentioned earlier, we stay within the text. So we talk about the text by using the words of the text. And again, relationships are huge because if the students are not making those relationships with the text, they're not actively participating. The students enjoy reading the stories, the text. We use funny voices, we use accents, and this is basically to get at the content, the intent of the author. We read text backwards to focus on word choice. The opportunities for students to be involved are limitless. Writing is no longer accompanied with groans. My students can't wait to put their thoughts down in their journals. We all see the connections between writing and reading and writing and thinking. About a month ago, I was teaching a unit on juvenile justice, and the kids were doing loop writing, which is starting with personal and moving towards the content of the text. And we were also using doubting and believing, where they write from both perspectives. And I told the kids, I said, okay, well, go to your writing journals because you have all your pre-writing in there. And we went through it when I told them it was time to write their essay. And one of the students raised his hand. He was amazed, and he goes, wow, did you think this through? And I was like, yeah, I actually did plan this. But they saw the connection, and they didn't see that the essay now was an unsurmountable feat. It was a process, and they were able to see this. Bottom line, kids deserve a classroom that is engaging and respectful of their abilities. Common Core is that avenue. I am the expert once again in my classroom. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Noguchi, President Kennedy, and members of the board. My name is Rachel Clarine, and I'm a math training specialist in the district. And I wanted to share with you how what I do at schools is helping teachers to make that change and to see how important it is. So I'm going to do it through sharing a story with you. And I actually provided you with a green piece of paper with the actual words from the teacher I'm sharing the story from, because I quoted her a lot when I was writing this. So I went to help plan a math lesson. And when I showed up, she said, I don't know how we're going to teach multiplying by decimals in a Common Core way. And I didn't sit there and tell her, well, this is how we'll do it. We got out the materials that the district has provided, we got out the standards, and we read them, and we went through them, and we decided together on a pathway to try and help her students. Even after working diligently to come up with this plan, she was still hesitant. She told me, I don't think the lesson is going to work. She wasn't sure the students would get it. But then she says it all fell into place while she was watching the lesson. After the lesson, she was so excited. She said 100% of my students were engaged. They helped each other understand. They figured it out together. And it was amazing to see the transition between what she saw with her students prior to trying this out, the Common Core way, and what she saw after trying it this way. And she felt so empowered after this that she didn't just leave it at that lesson, but she kept going with it, and she built on it, and she shared it. And she's continuing to send me information about how great her students are doing and how much they feel empowered by teaching themselves and coming up with these things on their own. So with the support that the district is providing, teachers are seeing the change, and they're getting to make use of the change. They're seeing the power of what Common Core can do in their classrooms, but it's taking time. They need time to read it, they need time to see it, and to try it themselves, but they're really enjoying it. I was at a site today, and the teacher told me after we observed her teaching a lesson, she said, this is the most fun I've had teaching it forever, because it's fun to teach when the kids are learning and enjoying it. Thank you. So hopefully what you heard, as you heard from our principals, from our teachers, from our instructional aides, and our parents, that this is a journey. It's a journey that we've been on for a few years, but it's a journey, and everyone is engaged in the learning around the journey. Sometimes it's really hard, sometimes it's challenging, but we are in it because we believe it's the best thing for our students. Because of the difficulty and the challenge and the shifts that we have to make, it's critical that our work around social emotional learning become in alignment with our Common Core work. It's critical that our teachers be able to engage students in social emotional learning practices so that they can persevere in this challenging work of the Common Core. And so we've begun to make inroads into that through our professional learning and trying to embed some social emotional focus in the Common Core because it underpins a teacher's ability to really engage students in this way. So in addition to the supports for
with professional learning and instructional materials and pedagogy, we have begun to do some work around changing our assessment practices. So if you remember from the framework, assessments was one of the arms on that square that has to shift as we shift instruction in the district. Not just our thinking about what assessment is, the purpose of assessment, but how we actually assess students. So within our units of study, we've begun to embed formative as well as summative assessment practices. Dr. Roberts spoke about our creation of our Smarter Balance Aligned, because we're not calling them assessments, but we're calling them Smarter Balance Aligned Assessment Tasks. And that's our way of having students begin to try on the work so that we as a district can gain a sense of how our students might perform, but so that teachers can also gain a sense of what it looks like when students are trying to do this work. Finally, we continue to look at student work through our data inquiry process as a form of formative assessment. And then Cherie Harris also mentioned her involvement on our standards-based report card alignment. So there's that work that's happening to change the report cards so that our teachers and our parents can be better informed about how students are progressing with the Common Core standards. All right, so that fourth arm that Dr. Roberts mentioned was around equity. And in our work with Common Core implementation, there have been several initiatives and things that are happening to ensure that our students with special needs, our English learners, are not left behind in this work around the Common Core. So for our English learners, we actually have a cadre of teachers who are digging deeply into the ELD standards, the new ELD standards that have been adopted. They're so tightly connected and aligned to the ELA Common Core standards that the teachers are really able to grasp onto how to support their English language learners with the work of the Common Core. For our students with special needs, we're beginning to do work around universal design for learning principles, which are those principles for providing access to content and providing some of the things that are embedded within the Common Core, providing multiple opportunities and access points, ways to show your understanding for our students with special needs. And then finally, for our struggling learners, we continue to provide interventions for our students who are struggling to maintain and to make adequate progress. We're hoping that our work with the NCLB waiver and the opportunity to have the 20% set aside, as well as some of the discussions around the LCAP, where everyone is talking about how are students with special needs, how are our English learners, how are our struggling students going to access this, that those might provide funding opportunities to do some of the work that our stakeholders have said in terms of time that the teachers need for collaboration and for planning, as well as those supports for our students who are experiencing challenges.
We're almost there. One other major area that we must have as a part of our implementation is the engagement of our stakeholders. So this particular strand about stakeholder and community engagement is one that we have begun working on since our journey began in 2010. We began with some basic community awareness workshops. Those have now expanded to this year. We have in each of the 3 geographical regions, we have a series. The series consists of 3 workshops. We have actually provided you with a flyer, so we invite you to come and participate in the upcoming sessions. We do have one in the East on January 29th. On January 30th, there will be one in the central area, and on February 12th, we will have one in the West, and those are the ELA sessions. The ELA sessions and the math sessions. You've already missed the one in the East. That was last week, but you do have an opportunity in the West on January 29th and in the central area on February 12th. And these are opportunities where we provide parents, yes, with the information, we're building their capacity around what the Common Core is, but we also take the time to provide some concrete information as to what they can do at home and how it's changing in the classroom. We also have been engaging with our collective bargaining partners. This is work that continues to unfold. We engage with them by sharing with them the information. For example, our implementation plan that I believe we attached to the executive summary. we're able to get feedback from our SCTA as well as our UPE partners. We continue to provide presentations to our advisory group. This year we met with I believe the CAC. Last year we provided several presentations for DAC, and we continue to provide presentations to our DLAC. Our Leadership Academy, we had the opportunity to actually participate and present to the Common Core. And I believe as a result of that, one of the members of the Academy had Common Core to be her capstone presentation. She shared that presentation with me, which had some very pointed strategies that we can use to enhance the work. Iris has already spoken to the standards-based report card process. As we continue to develop this, we're going to engage our stakeholders. We will have them to come in and to really look at the report cards before implementation, because we want to make certain that they're going to be a useful tool for our parents, that they can use this as a vehicle to engage with teachers around their child's performance. We continue to use the PEV process through the Guide to Success development, the LCAP engagement. It's one of the priorities, and our website is has information and is still under development. We continue to upload information for all of our stakeholders in and outside of the district. At this time, we have the opportunity to hear from two of our parents, Angel Garcia and Sarah Inman.
Good evening, President Kennedy, and good evening, board members and Superintendent Noguchi. My name is Sarah Inman, and I have a daughter currently in kindergarten at Sutterville, and I have a son who will be entering kindergarten next year at Sutterville. And so I'm very lucky. I feel very fortunate that my children are able to come up with the Common Core, and that the No Child Left Behind is being left behind, because I think that the Common Core is very, very exciting. I think that it is teaching kids how to think as opposed to what to think. I think that it's teaching kids how to critically think and how to be prepared for life skills when they have problems. As they learn through kindergarten on, they'll know how to address their problems because they're being taught how to problem solve, as opposed to just being taught, this is the information and now we want you to just say it back out. I'm excited because it's teaching, or it's allowing teachers to be the professionals that the teachers are, and getting them in there to critically think, and how do we, teach these kids to actually get to them so that they can meet the standards. And so I'm very, very excited that my children have the opportunity to come up with the Common Core. I've had an opportunity to attend the training by Dr. Roberts and Dr. Taylor, and I thought it was excellent, and I'm very, very excited to see Sac City doing all the training that they're doing, because I think that an important part in all of this is going to be not just having the teachers involved and the principals involved and the administrators involved, but also having the parents involved and having the parents understand what Common Core is and what they can be doing with their children at home, and the extracurricular activities that they can do with their children to support what the children are learning in the classroom and expand on what the children are learning in the classroom. And so I'm really happy to see that Sac City is conducting all of these trainings and all of these workshops. Currently, what I'm seeing now in the classroom, seeing Common Core be implemented little by little, but I'd definitely like to see more. I'd like to see, as a parent, I'd like to see the teachers definitely get more training, because the feeling that I'm getting as a parent is that the teachers, not all the teachers necessarily have really embraced the Common Core, have really looked at the Common Core, have really brought it into the classroom. I don't know if the teachers, how they're being in-serviced, if they're being directly in-serviced, or how that's looking. And so I will say as a parent, one of my major concerns with Common Core, I'm very excited about it, but is what's happening with the teachers and how are the teachers being taught to teach the Common Core, and are the teachers embracing the Common Core, and do they understand the Common Core? Another concern that I have with the Common Core and its implementation is the technology that I'm seeing in the classrooms, or the lack of technology that I'm seeing in the classrooms in Sac City. I'm aware that they start assessments at 3rd grade with Common Core, and my understanding is that all the assessments are going to be done via computer, and it's not going to be multiple choice anymore. The kids are actually going to be typing out paragraphs. They're actually going to be typing out answers, as opposed to just pressing A, B, or C, or circling A, B, and C. And I know that at the school that my daughter attends, there's definitely not enough computers, and I think it's going to be a real interesting spring to see how all that assessment gets done with all of those kids, since there doesn't seem to be the infrastructure there to do the assessments, and I anticipate that as potentially being a real problem in the future with Common Core. The other thing is, and I know hopefully as the budget gets better, we're going to go to smaller classroom sizes. But I think that Common Core is going to put a lot of, and I think a few people talked about this, but a lot of demands on the teacher. And I think, especially the K through 3rd, when you have these big classrooms now, 30 kids or so, and teaching is a lot more creative, and it's a lot more elaborate and a lot more engaging. That's going to be, and it's all going to be new and implemented, a new curriculum for these teachers. That's going to put a lot of pressure with 30 kids as opposed to 20 kids or smaller classroom sizes on these teachers, and so that's a concern I have. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Interim Superintendent Noguchi, President Kennedy, and members of the board. I just came to express my support and experience with some of the ways Common Core has been implemented in our school. Some of the work has been changing, and it's really been helpful. I have 3 kids in the school district now, and one of my sons has special needs and attends Cabrillo Elementary. And one of the things that I noticed is the math homework. My son not only has autism, but he also struggles with learning and has some learning disabilities. And so, prior to, our school implementing Common Core practices, it was just do these 30 problems. And now, when he does the math worksheet, it's explain how you got this answer, show me different ways that you can do it. So what that does for me and my son is we don't feel defeated every time we do a math worksheet. We feel like it's a learning process, and he feels successful in what he's doing. Another way that I feel happy about Common Core implementation in our school is our principal has begun, even though full implementation doesn't start until next year, she's begun doing workshops for parents. So even though the district has done their workshops, our school is ahead of the game and really engaging parents. And what that does for me as a parent is makes me know that I'm important in my son's learning. I am an equal partner with the teachers and the students, and we're in this together. And so I'm really, really happy with how things are going so far, and I feel like as a parent, I jumped both feet in, and I'm ready to work with the teachers and my son and my other 2 kids on this journey. And so I'm really happy with the way things are going. As the other parent said, I have one concern, and it's in regards to technology. I feel like teachers and kids need to be trained in not only keyboarding, but how to use technology as a tool for Common Core implementation, and a way to learn and look at different perspectives by using technology and using the internet. And then also, I would like to see the district, they already have partnerships with Sac City and Sac State, but strengthening those partnerships to maybe bring some interns into our schools to help with the implementation of Common Core. I think it'd be very helpful with a limited budget. I think that strengthening the partnerships and bringing students in would be helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you all very much for being here tonight. So in addition to our Sac City website, we have identified for you 2 other online resources that have a plethora of information regarding the Common Core implementation in California, the California Department of Ed, as well as the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium. The Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium is the creator of the both the math and ELA assessment items. If you were to go to that website, you would find sample items as well as the practice tests that our students have at their availability at this point. Moving on, this is a journey. We have not arrived. There is plenty of work to be done, but as we engage in reflective practice, we have learned some lessons and we're using them to inform the work as we move forward. Just to highlight, I won't go through all of them for you, but the first one, the work is hard, it is messy, and it takes time. It takes time for our principals, for our teachers, for our students, for parents, for district staff. And we do need to be very strategic as to how we create the time for our stakeholders to engage in this work. The infrastructure is critical. We have shared with you some of the big buckets of work around that. Concretely engaging our parents. After each workshop session, we do an evaluation. We take our parents' feedback to heart, and we do immediately implement the changes that our parents are highlighting. And we continue to hear, make it more concrete, make it more concrete. So what we are purposely going to do moving forward is next year, this year we've taken the year to build their knowledge base. Next year it's going to be around the curricular resources that we adopt, how they're able to use them as tools in the home, and also around the report card. How do they use that as a vehicle to communicate? So we're going to really bring it down to, we believe, a very concrete place where our parents will be able to engage and will have additional resources in their toolkits that they can use as the students transition. And lastly, the learning is the doing and the doing is the learning. We are learning this work, our teachers are learning this work, our principals are learning this work alongside us, as well as our parents. And it is organic, it is iterative, it is complex, but I also want to end by saying it's fun. It is messy work, but it's fun work. It's really challenging the brain. And when the brain is challenged, it sparks, and we're excited. And so I won't go into a brain-based research presentation tonight, but just know that this is just awesome work.
Please do.
So, and moving forward, just some things that are on the radar as we move forward. Iris has already talked about the standards-based report cards. We will continue to engage with our teachers, and then we'll be moving them out to our stakeholders, other stakeholders. We will, in February, in a few weeks, begin our textbook adoption process, which will engage not only our teachers and principals, but also our stakeholder groups as well. We will continue to develop our curriculum maps, which are scope and sequence documents, but they have more information that will help guide teachers in their implementation. And lastly, communities of practice. We have begun this already with our principals. Dr. Taylor alluded to the networks that our principals have created. We would like to have a similar avenue for our teachers, for them to be able to not just meet within their school building, but be able to meet across sites. One of the inherent beauties of the Common Core is that we're able to communicate with each other within the state and outside of the state. And so we really need to tear down the walls and to have this collaborative experience to move beyond the school building. So we're looking at creating, developing, nourishing, fostering communities of practice using a blended model, utilizing technology as well as some face-to-face engagements. So that is our presentation tonight. Questions that you have?
Are you still asking questions of the board, or are we going to go to public comment?
Well, you can go ahead. Yeah, I mean, we do have public comment if you would like to wait. It's up to you.
Either way, how do you? What's your pleasure?
Go ahead.
So, just to go back to your slide, they're not numbered on my book. It's titled "Student Supports and Interventions."
Yes.
And, as the presentation earlier, I'm big at specific words, and this specific word hit me because I just think that when we place a label on a student, they become the label. So on the third bullet down, it says struggling learners. If a student believes that they're struggling, they'll never overcome that obstacle. And so I'd like to see the language change on that, maybe a striving learner, something more positive directed, but that, tells us that they're not fully there, they're not proficient in that specific area, but they're striving to be.
This is the language that you'll normally see in educational documents, but we normally call them students of promise. So, but if we had said that, then people would ask, well, what does that mean? So, but we'll use that going forward.
Yeah, students of promise is good. Yes. So the other thing is, when we talk about stakeholder engagement, one of the things that was, it hit me really hard one day. I was sitting there doing homework with my daughter, who's in 5th grade, and she had to deal with a math problem that had a negative integer. And the thing is I got scared because I go, here I am, the parent who could actually help my child through that problem, knowing though that she had never been presented with that material in class about how do you deal with a negative number, and then realizing how many other parents in her 5th grade class or in the other 5th grade class actually knew how to work with their student on that specific problem. And then I realized at that point, boy, Common Core state standards really requires not only parent involvement, but community involvement. We live in neighborhoods where we have retired teachers. And, if we're not knocking on their door and we're not asking them to come and help our students and parents through homework time, I think we're missing a lost opportunity there. We're missing that opportunity. So, I think that I'd like to see that as part of the community engagement, stakeholder engagement, because despite the fact that we might have, how do you play with your child at home so that the learning is extended, but that homework time is critical as well. And who's there to support the parent when the child is asking how, my child asked me last night, what's prime factorization? How does the parent overcome that when they don't know the answer?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, President Kennedy. I do have a couple of questions. One of them is, so Common Core is the standard, right? I mean, that's kind of, how does that relate to curriculum? I mean, does that mean that are there different curriculum models that we can use and choose from in order to achieve this standard? Or does the Common Core dictate what kind of curriculum we need to adopt?
Excuse me.
It's a basic question that I don't know, and maybe you can...
So it doesn't dictate the curricular resources that we utilize. But when we do identify curricular resources, we must do the alignment to ensure that the tools that we are utilizing will indeed apply to the Common Core state standards.
So, for example, before we used to debate between open court or this type of model, I mean, Is that a debate of the past, or is that something that we will continue to have to?
We'll probably still continue to have that. In looking at the submissions that the state board just approved, the adopted materials for mathematics, you will see some that we would consider to be traditional basal mathematics textbooks, like the Open Court, even though that's ELA, but similar to that in mathematics. You also have some that we would consider in the math world to be what we would call reformed-based mathematics that are more in alignment with students engaging in the learning, and it doesn't have the nice wraparound that the teacher can use as a guide. And so there are two different schools. So there are some people who like the basal because of the guidance and the prescription that it provides, and then there are others who will prefer the more constructivist-based type of text because it provides the teacher with enough information to help create the unit of study or the lesson. But both must be in alignment to the Common Core state standards.
So that means that we as a district will have an option to use or one or the other, as long as it's aligned, right? I mean, it
That's
can
correct.
be a multitude of different
So the
types, right?
textbook adoption process is exactly what we're going to do. We have a very comprehensive, robust criteria.
And the reason I bring this question is because a few years ago we adopted a new math curriculum, a new way of teaching math, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I remember voting for it, and it was hailed as a phenomenal way of teaching, right? I mean, math, it's not the steps, but it's the conceptualizing and how you got there, right? And so, but soon thereafter, the question that was brought to my attention as I was visiting one of my schools is that we were very deficient in technology. Visited a teacher that basically said it's great curriculum if I had a projector with a laptop that could help me move through the material and advance, right? She had to spend 15 minutes prior to classroom writing everything on the board, raising it and preparing for the next. I mean, so not that she couldn't do it, it was just, barriers to getting that curriculum. So having said that, if Common Core is pushing us into a direction where we are going to be preparing students for higher learning and higher thinking, and we're going to be adopting curriculums that are going to get us there. What I'm wondering is, I can see through your PowerPoint presentation that there is a lot of strategy being put together, right? What I don't know is if the district has a policy or a structured method of not having to reinvent the wheel, but for example, a strategic plan for the adoption and implementation of curriculums. For example, it seems to me, as I've been here for 5 years, many times we adopt or integrate either initiatives or curriculums that are disjointed. I mean, we see a great thing and we're working, and then we kind of drag all the resources around it to make it work, and not enough of a prior planning, bringing the teachers in, and from A through C, how is this really going to work? So that we know from the model all the way down to the materials, to the training, even if we cannot get it done all at once, at least we can kind of plan it out. There are some strategic plannings that are going on right now as I see the Common Core, but in the future, it would be great either, and I don't know if this is a debate that we would have later, do we need to adopt a policy, or, we would love to have the recommendation by Interim Superintendent Noguchi on how do we best set the stage for future adoption so that we know curriculum models, how that intersects with technology. I mean, many times we have great curriculum, but then again, we are short in technology because not all classrooms are equipped. Staff training. Staff time demands. I mean, great initiatives, but then they're stretched so thin that, can they really get it done? Materials, funding, I mean, just in its entirety so that we are not walking blind into great initiatives or great curriculums or great materials, but they're disjointed with how the rest of the district is operating. If there's a need for a generic policy of the board so that in the future there's the pro forma of not restricting how staff chooses or what they choose, but nonetheless so that things don't get forgotten. If it's a checklist so that any time that we're going to be going through this again as we implement Common Core, are all our stakeholders? I mean, have we gotten the feedback from the classroom teacher as to do they have the equipment, the materials, and so on and so forth, and then the timeline, how that will roll out. So
There is currently a board policy. It is not as comprehensive as what you've just laid out. So it would need to be amended to incorporate all of the pieces that you've mentioned to ensure the cohesiveness.
correct. Yes, cohesiveness, not at the expense of restriction, because I mean, we don't want to hamstring you with what needs to get done, nonetheless, to make sure that we don't forget key valuable components of that.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but Member Rodriguez kind of struck a chord with me. And I just have a quick question in regards to stakeholders. The parent-teacher home visit project has their academic parent-teacher teams, and I'm wondering if you guys are working collaborative with them as far as training our parents how to teach their kids at home.
So we've begun conversations with Lisa. That is in the works. We are hoping to be able to collaborate with at least one of the sessions later this spring. I know there are some coming up between now and the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're not able to engage in those yet, but we have already begun the conversation with Lisa planning for that.
Good, I'm glad to hear that, because that's the perfect opportunity to be able to engage with our parents.
Yes, she and I met before winter break to discuss just that.
Good, thanks.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Kenny. I'm glad my light is working now.
I'll tell you when it's working and when it's not.
One more question that I just remembered. After school programs, I don't see them listed on here as a stakeholder. They're a huge stakeholder in this. So can you tell me what that looks like in terms of their being engaged in the process of learning Common Core state standards and then helping children with the homework part of it?
I will. So our team in the curriculum office, our training specialists, have been working really closely with our after-school staff in terms of planning the summer service and the summer learning opportunities. We've also done workshops with them, and then 2 members of that department actually sit in our academic team meetings every other Friday, which also focuses on the Common Core. So they're intricately involved in the work that we're doing and learning with us and trying to align their programs so that students are getting that Common Core concentration from when they walk through the doors in the morning to when they leave beyond the school day.
President Kennedy, if you don't mind.
Right in.
Given the comments that I had made prior, I mean, I don't want to leave it as just a forethought. If you can help us take a stab at what that policy could be changed to be, it would be great if you can,
We'll work on that.
And then just bring it back to the board when you incorporate the lessons that you have taken, and then, everything we can, so that it will be great for the board to have a.
We will use this opportunity as the launching pad for that. So as we go through this process with our teachers starting in February, we'll be able to do what you've just said and then be able to outline that in a policy.
Okay, that will be great. Thank you.
Mr. Ross.
We have 2 public comments on this item from Darlene Anderson and Terrence Gladney.
Hello, Ms. Anderson. How are you?
Hello. Common Core is a huge task for this district, although it sounds wonderful, and I really can't wait for it to really get implemented. I look at the district, and I know that most children get up and they have a process that they have to go through at a local school. So like in middle high school, they have 6 teachers, and each teacher has core curriculum that they're working, and it's kind of like all different, and kids are doing something different in every class. So when you look at how Common Core is going to affect these children, and we know when we looked at how well our kids were doing, the data, we know that 3% somewhere and 18% somewhere else, and 15% somewhere and 27% somewhere, 50% somewhere, 57% somewhere, and 85% somewhere, and 95% somewhere. So we know how many children are scoring above the 50th percentile. But when we look at targeted intervention, how does that look in an everyday life of a child who has to be engaged in the local school when they are not doing as well as their peers? I would like to know, I understand the Common Core concept, but I would like to know how we're going to attempt to work with the sites so that they take on this as their responsibility. The conversation has to be site level, and everyone has to agree that this is how they're going to work, because we haven't come to that kind of agreement yet. Teachers are still doing their thing, and we still have children who are failing. And I just think that when you're going through a transition where you're going to be responsible for every child learning, I think that the task has to be greater and it has to be site level, and every principal has to be responsible for the leadership and the development of the staff at the local site. But that has to be an application and process too. And I don't see that that work has begun yet. But when I was working for Los Rios Community College.
You're wrapping up, right?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
We went through a process called Interfaith Alliance training, where they pulled all the staff together and talked about what were the most important things and what you were willing to sacrifice and what you were willing to hang on to and how to survive as a district. And I think that this district needs to go through a process similar to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You guys have a good evening.
Appreciate it.
Oh, Gustavo's on the clock? Who's
Yeah,
on the clock?
We're struggling here with the clock.
Good evening.
Ms. Anderson almost had 85 minutes.
I know. I was like, well, let me get comfortable. Good evening, President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Noguchi, the rest of the board. I'm Terrence Gladney. I'm a parent and community servant in a bunch of different capacities, but I was actually blessed and fortunate enough to be part of the district team that went to Nashville as part of the Castle Cross District team. And one thread that I heard consistent across those schools in Nashville about the SEL implementation was that everybody at every level needed to model what they're trying to implement. And I think that that's very important for us as well when we're talking about Common Core, because we have a great opportunity now to model Common Core philosophy across everything that we do. I think that right now the people that are closest to the students, the teachers, the principals, the parents are all in, as you heard, from my principal as well as one of my fellow parents at Cabrillo. And I challenge, all of us stakeholders to jump all in. So at the board level, at the district staff level as well, to model a Common Core way of thinking. And what I mean is, if we're going to talk about recognizing that students think differently and they learn differently, then we need to recognize that all stakeholders don't come in the same package. As a child, I would sit in church in the pews and I would hear people say, come as you are, but someone will come maybe dressed down a little bit or in tattered clothes because that's what they have. And I would hear people, maybe talk about them or gossip or give them a look. And I sit here as an adult now, and I've sat through board meetings where we say, parents come and share your voice. And I hear parents admonished for being passionate or loud or in a different package than what we might expect or what we're used to. So I think that we need to do what we're telling our kids to do. That's the only way they're going to really become Common Core students and then later Common Core adults and really be world ready, and that encompasses career and college. Just very briefly, one of the reasons you guys did not see PTA listed as one of the community groups that was engaged was because in a number of the meetings and processes that I've been through at the district level, I've sat where I've been talked to. Again, there's a package that district staff or committees expect that I have. So as a representative for so many school sites and members, before I agree to a meeting, I ask, what is the purpose for the meeting? When is it on the board agenda? Because I know the process. And I didn't get a date, but what I said I would not do was commit to a meeting where there was not an initial meeting, a subsequent meeting where we could process what we were given and then give substantive feedback. That wasn't given, so that's why you haven't seen us as one of the community groups that was engaged or presented to. I'm also now my school site DAC representative, and I know that we just formed a new board, so it's great that they were presented to a number of times last year, but with the new board in place and a DAC that's been completely reconstituted, that's a process that needs to be completely redone as well. And then I did hear that there had
Last
been.
Mr.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I got you.
Thanks.
I heard that, that parent engagement and feedback was included and implemented. I'd like to see what the process looked like before the parent feedback and what it looks like now in comparison to show that it actually was implemented. Thank you.
We took that down, staff? Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. No more questions of the board?
May I just want to thank a group of individuals who are here tonight, the academic team members that are here. We just applaud them for being here. They're part of this work and this journey. So just wanted to acknowledge them. And also thanks again to our principals, parents, teachers, instructional aides, and our training specialists for being here tonight. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Okay, future board meetings, February 6th is our next meeting, 4:30, then February 20th also at 4:30. Before we adjourn, we received the information. Before we adjourn, I'd like to read this, so if we could pay attention, that would be appreciated. George Russell Menke grew up in Sacramento and attended McClatchy High School. He worked for Sacramento City Unified School District for 27 years as a welder in the maintenance department. He had an immense love for his work and the people he worked with. George worked with great care and precision when building and fixing things around the district. Good was never good enough for him. It had to be perfect or it wasn't right in his eyes. He was his own biggest critic when it came to welding, and he took a great deal of pride in his craft. George was a storyteller and loved to tell, "George, can you fix this?" stories. School employees would constantly bring him something completely destroyed and ask if he could fix it. He usually gave them a funny look and said, "Well, I can't make it any worse." He was a devoted father and a true and loyal friend to many, and he will be missed by all. So I would like to adjourn in the name of George Russell Menke. Is there a motion for adjournment? Motion by Vice President Pritchett, second by Arroyo. Member Arroyo, all those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.
No, I